Hey everybody, live from Danbury, Connecticut. It's your old buddy, Uncle Rich. And guys, this is show 294. Today's date is February 17th. And the name of the show is Bernie, not BS. And you're going to say, Rich, what do you mean Bernie, not BS? Guys, on Facebook, every time I see a post with Bernie's picture or whatever where there's comments, I type in Bernie, not bullshit. And the amazing thing is, it's hard to believe how many thumbs up I've gotten. So obviously Bernie, not bullshit, is really resonating with everybody. And you know, people are going to say, you know, Rich, you shouldn't use that type of language. You know, especially when you're doing a TV show, you know, with a local audience. And I want to thank everybody for watching. And I want to thank you for subscribing on YouTube. So if you remember, push the subscribe button when you're watching us on YouTube, and you'll never miss a trick. But guys, you know, I've been warned when I was going to do this show. You know, some people told me, they said, you know, Rich, be careful. Be careful when you do a show like this. They said, don't lower yourself to the level of a two-bit carnival barker. And who does that kind of remind you of? But guys, you know, I was told you don't want to seem to be a con man and a huckster. And to that I say,
an unconstitutional bullshit impeachment.
What? And look at the fans, look at the rabid fans going crazy. Look at, hey Kurt, can you play that again? Just for shits and giggles, just for the fun of it.
Unconstitutional bullshit impeachment.
Guys, so if our dear leader can use the word bullshit while he's standing at the podium with the seal of the President of the United States, when our dear leader can do that, why can't Uncle Rich use the same kind of language? And guys, I don't, you know, I really don't think it's obscene. Well, it kind of is, but I mean, let's be honest with each other. Trump has said a lot worse things. But you know, Larry David came up with an ingenious method. And I tell you, this is brilliant. He came up with an ingenious method of a bullshit separator. You're going to say, Rich, what do you mean? A bullshit separator. And guys, Larry David came up with something that repels people who understand science, facts, and the truth.
Look, I got this idea to wear that hat so I wouldn't have to have lunch with Bill Rosenthal, and it worked like a charm. He saw me in the hat and he left the restaurant. It was amazing. And
I'm not surprised.
you know what? It's really coming in handy.
Yeah, because no one's going to want to be anywhere near you.
Exactly. It's a great people repellent.
No one's going to want to be anywhere near you. And guys, that's the truth. But there are some people, some like-minded thinking people, who, after a short explanation, might not take offense at a Trump hat. So guys, this next clip, I got to do a lot of beeping because these motorcycle guys are a tough crowd, and Larry David had a lot of fun with it. So Kurt, let me get my bleeping together. Bleep! All right, roll it. Bleep!
Oh, God.
Bleep!
What are you trying to
Bleep!
do, man? What the fuck are you doing?
Bleep!
I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Bleep! Bleep!
I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
Just be more careful next time, okay?
Will do. Okay.
more careful next time. So when we're dealing with like-thinking simple folk, all can be forgiven, right? And guys, but it works both ways. You know, you can use the hat to protect you from people, but you can also use the hat to make people go away. So Kurt, let's show our next clip with Larry David at the sushi bar. Hit it.
Arigato. Arigato.
All right, 2 seats at the sushi bar.
Uh-oh. No thanks.
You know what? Actually, I think we'd prefer to sit at a table, please.
So see, guys, the hats work both ways. And when Larry David was taken to task about wearing the hat, and this is from a famous sports guy, sports commentator, listen how he manned up and he said, well, you'll hear what he said. Kurt, number 6, please.
There are people that wear the MAGA hat and like what the MAGA hat represents. Are you afraid about alienating them? They could be fans of the show.
Alienate yourselves.
Alienate yourself.
Go and alienate. You have my blessing. No, I can give a
Ooh. Hey, at least you know where he stands. And he didn't pull any punches. And, you know, it's just amazing the way things work. But next we're gonna go to Neil deGrasse Tyson. And one of the problems that we have with some of the simple folk and the Republican conservatives is not knowing enough to know when you're wrong. And you're going to say, wait a minute, Rich, well, could you explain this a little better? I won't. I'll let Neil deGrasse Tyson explain it. So, Kurt, number 7, please.
One of the great challenges in this world is knowing enough about a subject to think you're right.
To think you're right.
But not enough about the subject to know you're wrong.
Bada bing. And guys, that's what it comes down to. People, Uncle Joey does his research. Yeah, where does he do his research? He does it where he can find other people that have the same biases that he does. So they have confirmed biases. He finds somebody that thinks the same way as him, and right away, oh, look at this, he clicks on it, and he never gets the other side of the story. And Uncle Joey got rid of his Facebook page, so I have a funny feeling that he's finally thrown in the towel. And he's finally manned up, and he said, you know what? I can't defend Trump anymore. But, you know, there are some people who will come right out and they'll just express themselves in a way that would make Neil deGrasse Tyson proud. And one of those guys is Joe Rogan. And guys, I got to be honest with you. I wasn't that familiar with Joe Rogan until one day I saw him do a podcast with Lawrence Krauss. And I want to tell you, he blew me away. And I said, man, this guy is sharp. So anyway, he's got my attention. And this is what he has to say about Bernie. Kurt, number 8, please.
Who are you going to vote for in the primary?
I think I'll probably vote for Bernie. Him as a human being, when I was hanging out with him, and
Yeah.
I believe in him. I like him a lot. What Bernie stands for is a guy who, well, look, you could dig up dirt on every single human being that's ever existed if you catch them in their worst moment and you magnify those moments and you cut out everything else and you only display those worst moments. That said, You can't find very many with Bernie. He's been insanely consistent his entire life. He's basically been saying the same thing, been for the same thing his whole life. And that, in and of itself, is a very powerful structure to operate from.
Join the movement. So, guys, he's been saying the same thing for virtually his whole life. And you're going to say, Rich, how are you going to prove to us that he always says the same thing? Guys, we're going to go back to 1981, and we're going to show you Bernie, and he's going to be on with Phil Donahue, which I'm sure a lot of the people today are not even going to know who he is. But there's also somebody else on the Today Show, and it's Jane Pauley. Now, guys, you got to remember, this is almost 40 years ago, and Bernie is singing the exact same song today as he did back then. So, Kurt, let's prove my point with number 9.
But you would consider legislation that would tax the wealthy?
Absolutely. We want to take the burden.
Tax the wealthy. 1981.
Those corporations and those individuals who can better afford to pay.
You surprised everybody with this victory, including media. And not all media has been consistently attentive to you. Isn't that right?
He surprised the media then. He's going to shock the media now. And you're going to say, Rich, come on, he's a socialist. Nobody's going to vote for a socialist. Guys, whether you realize it or not, we're all socialists. But we grew up believing that socialism is bad. But before we get to that, we're going to show you Jane Pauley. Now, we just showed her back in 1981. We're going to show her yesterday on the Sunday Today Show on CBS. Here's Jane Pauley. Kurt, number 10, please.
Baby boomers who grew up during the Cold War were taught that socialism led to communism, and communism threatened American freedom. When they think of socialism, they think of the Soviet Union, with its gulags and bad economy. But the millennials who support Sanders or Warren didn't grow up with that history.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Guys, I'm a baby boomer. Believe me, you know, I went through, I went to Catholic school. The nuns told us without any hesitation, socialism is bad and communism is worse. And guys, that's all. Hey, we were capitalists. Everything was going good. Who are we going to argue? We didn't know. And you listen to a nun, someone in authority, tell you something, you got to believe her, right? And my parents felt the same way. We all did. All the baby boomers, we thought the worst thing possible was to end up in a Russian gulag. And worse than that was to end up in a Chinese gulag because you couldn't pray. But guys, things have certainly changed. And luckily, we have people like Juan Williams who will go on Fox and he'll say, you know what? The difference between the Trump supporters and the Bernie supporters, there's not much difference. Everybody wants the same thing. And what do they want? Equality, financial equality. You know what I mean? Equality, racial equality, monetary equality, being able to go to the right schools, going to whatever church you want, whatever you want to do. That's what we want. We don't want to be intimidated by a bunch of rich people, and Bernie's going to point that out. So now, Kurt, did we do number 11 with Kurt, with Juan Williams? Hit it.
But if you're talking in terms of the politics, you go back to the Bernie Sanders of the world. And Neil, I think it's also interesting that a lot of the Bernie Sanders people are very close on the scale to Donald Trump people in terms of that
There
popular
you
sense
go.
that, wait, why shouldn't we limit trade to protect some jobs for hardworking blue-collar people in this country? Why shouldn't we do something to make sure that young people can afford health care if we do much the same for the elderly in terms of Medicare? What about Social Security? A lot of the young people don't believe it'll be there for them. So it's interesting.
Guys, look at this. Look at the numbers. Kurt, keep that up if you can. What's wrong with those numbers? Take a good look at them. Don't they come up over 100%? So these are the kind of polls we get on Fox News. And guys, it could be an honest mistake, but those numbers don't add up. All right, so anyway. They're not supposed to add up. It's not a mistake. Oh, okay. Thank you, Kurt. Hey, Kurt saved my butt. Thank you, Kurt. Very good. Hey, I stand corrected. That's why we do the show. It's a learning experience. Thanks, Kurt. But anyway, the next clip we're going to show you is the Republicans and the fact that they like Social Security as much as the Democrats do. So, Kurt, number 12, please.
Social Security has never missed a single payment. This is a system that works. That's why Dwight Eisenhower, in a letter to his brother, said this: should any political party attempt to abolish Social Security, unemployment insurance, and eliminate labor laws and farm programs, you would not hear of that party again in our political history. There is a tiny splinter group, of course, that believes that you can do these things. Among them are a few Texas oil millionaires and an occasional politician or businessman from other areas. Their number is negligible and they are stupid.
Their number is negligible and they are stupid. But you know what, guys? They got the money. And that's all you need to buy the government. And they do a very good job of doing it. And why do you think we're still putting carbon in the air like we are? Because the government's been bought. Yeah, Trump said he was going to drain the swamp. Bull. He filled it up with his boys. So anyway, now we're going to show you Bernie being honest during a debate and actually answering a question which could jeopardize the idea that everything is free. So Kurt, number 13, please.
Sanders, I'll give you 10 seconds just to answer the very direct question. Will you raise taxes for the middle class in the Sanders administration?
People who have health care under Medicare for All will have no premiums, no deductibles, no co-payments, no out-of-pocket expenses. Yes, they will pay more in taxes, but less in health care for what they get.
Yes, they will pay more in taxes, but less in health care. So guys, it comes out to be a win for the average working guy and his family. Because once you put everything together into a big pot, which is what Bernie wants to do, hey, you can make the drug companies come around, the insurance companies, forget about them. They can sell supplemental insurance, and you're going to see they're going to lose everything they've been entitled to. But guys, the next clip we're going to play is from Tucker Carlson, and he's going to talk about democratic socialists. And I want you to pay very close attention and listen to what he says, because he gets it ass backwards. And I know Kurt's going to pull up that meme for us, that ass backwards. But anyway, Kurt, number 14, please. Beautiful.
What do democratic socialists believe? There's no formal platform, but the outlines are pretty clear. Democratic socialists support socialism, state ownership of major industries. That would include healthcare, technology, manufacturing. Some of them explicitly support communism.
So guys, Kurt, can you play that again? Could you give me a little more volume? That's all it's got. Well, can you play it again?
What do democratic socialists believe? There's no formal platform, but the outlines are pretty clear. Democratic socialists support socialism. State ownership of major industries, that would include healthcare,
State
technology,
ownership of
Some them
industry.
explicitly support
That's
communism.
not what democratic socialism is, guys. So right off the bat, he's trying to steer you wrong. Democratic socialism does not take over industry. It might regulate them, but it doesn't take them over. Don't buy the bull. No, socialism is something that we're used to, but we just don't understand. And guys, getting back to that clip with the baby boomers, when I was growing up, socialism was evil. No questions asked. And nobody asked any questions. But this next still we're going to show you is a lot of fun. So Kurt, can you bring up number 15? And this is, there's a Save America from Socialism, and I'm sure he's got a MAGA hat on. But, you know, down with socialism, but he drove on a socialist road to get here. Social Security check waiting to be cashed. And guys, that's what I always say. Ask people, are people that get a Social Security check socialists? You'll shut them right up. And then he gets a socialist Medicare card. And let's see, he's a beneficiary of a socialist GI Bill while he's enjoying time off from a 40-hour week courtesy of social labor movement. So Kurt, come back to me. So guys, socialism is nothing more than what we're used to. But the thing is, we've been told it's bad, and most people, they hear that, they repeat it without really knowing what it's all about. So Kurt, let's take it one step further with number 16. And guys, the corporate media doesn't want Bernie to be president. The Republican Party doesn't want Bernie to be president. The DNC doesn't want Bernie to be president. The pharmaceutical industry doesn't want Bernie to be president. The military-industrial complex doesn't want Bernie to be president. The prison-industrial complex doesn't want Bernie to be president. Wall Street sure doesn't want Bernie to be president. That is why I want Bernie to be president. Any questions? Guys, all he's going to do is fight for us. But he's not going to, it's not him fighting for us. It's us fighting for us. We all do it together. And we're going to prove it with the last still, because, you know, we won't change the minds of Trump supporters with facts, logic, or appeals of decency. If they could be influenced by these things, they wouldn't be Trump supporters. But we can outnumber them, and we can show up and vote this November, and every November from now on. So guys, it's really simple. Vote blue no matter who. And that's all I'm going to say. But now we go to the elongated versions of the clips. So this is where if there was something that really tickled your fancy during the short clips, you can kind of guess where it's going to come up on the longer version. So Kurt, let's start the party with Neil deGrasse Tyson and clip number 20. Hit it.
One of the great challenges in this world is knowing enough about a subject to think you're right, but not enough about the subject to know you're wrong.
Bada bing!
There's like
Any
a
questions?
gazillion hours of me on the internet. In almost every case, I'm talking about the universe, black holes, the Big Bang, time travel, God. But what I'm going to do in this masterclass is teach you how to think. The goal here is to train your mind how to see the world differently.
To be a
to
critical
question
thinker.
what others say. I've come to realize that there are three categories of truth. Personal truth, political truths, and the objective truths that shape our understanding of the universe. The interesting thing about an objective truth is that it's true no matter what. Imagine that.
It's true
By
no
the time
matter
we're
what.
done, you will be equipped with some of the methods and tools so you can turn data into information, information into knowledge, knowledge into wisdom.
Wisdom. Now you're
We
talking my
all
language.
have susceptibility to bias. Search engines on the internet are the epitome of confirmation bias. And you're going to use that as evidence that you are correct? No. The good thing about science is that it's true whether or not you believe in it. What does it mean to be skeptical? What does it mean to be convinced by data? A proper skeptic questions what they're unsure of, but recognizes when valid evidence is presented to change their mind. I will equip you to not only find objective truths, but then communicate to others how to get there. It's not good enough to be right. You also have to be effective. The less connected you are to what is objectively true, the less likely you will be able to make decisions that will benefit your life, the life of your family, and even civilization itself. I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson, and this is my master class.
So guys, you could sign up for that. I believe it's going to be a weekly series. But you know, what he was talking about is what I mentioned earlier. It's about a confirmation bias. And it happens to all of us. It's the way we are. You know, for some reason, let's say you go into the ice cream store and somebody says, well, I like chocolate. So I'm going to like anything that conforms with chocolate. I mean, we all have preconceived ideas, and it's time that we just admit them. And you know, this is the way you become a critical thinker. When something is wrong, you throw it out. You know, you don't be like people like, and I'm going to give Marty the business, but Marty's got a case of cognitive dissonance. He knows when things aren't right. Kirk, can you bring up one of our temperature charts? You know, when people look at a temperature chart on global warming, and they look at that chart, and they have to deny it, well, that's a case of cognitive dissonance. You see what's factual. You see what's real. You see what's true. But yet you can't admit it. Why? Because your party won't let you. All right. So guys, and this is, and you know, let's be honest with each other. This is what happens. And you get the people that watch Fox. These poor bastards, they don't know if they're coming or going. And why? Because they watch Fox. And half the time, they're being treated with information that's just garbage. All right, so anyway, let's see. I believe we're on number 21 now. And this is going to be Joe Rogan with Bernie again. And just listen how honest and open and sincere these guys are. So, Kurt, number 21, please.
Now, I'm glad you brought up Amazon. So one of the things that always freaks me out is when I find out that enormous corporations that make billions of dollars have tax loopholes where they literally pay no money. How is that possible?
How is that possible, Bernie?
It's the same thing as the drug companies. How is it possible that we pay 10 times more for insulin in this country and for other drugs than they do in Canada or countries around the world? And the answer is, it's power. So what is the goal of major corporations in America?
To make money.
It's to be deregulated.
Profit.
As much as possible. So in some cases, they can pollute our water, our air, our
There
environment.
you go. Who
It's
cares?
also not to pay any taxes. Trump campaign, as you'll recall, he said, my tax plan is not going to benefit the wealthy. It's going to benefit working people. Well, it turns out over 10 years, 83% of the benefit at the end of 10 years goes to the top 1%.
Boom.
That's what these guys do. I remember, I'm called the ranking member on the Budget Committee in the Senate. And some guy came forward representing, I don't know, one of the big business organizations. And this is their agenda. Their agenda was to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and to do away with all corporate taxes. So what you have right now, that's what greed is about. They want it all. So as you indicated, you have a company like Amazon, owned by Jeff Bezos, who happens to be the wealthiest guy in America, worth about $150 billion. Amazon paid zero in federal income taxes. And it's not just them. Dozens of corporations paid nothing or very, very little. And on top of all of that, you got these guys able to stash all over the world trillions of dollars in the Cayman Islands, in Bermuda, in Luxembourg, and other tax havens. That is insane, and that has got to end.
Yeah, how is it legal to do that? Why is it legal?
Good question. So why is it legal to do that? Guys, what's your answer? Because they bought the government, right? So they can tell their representatives what to do. Hey, I got you into office. You do what I tell you to do. Got me? Here's boss. We got you. Here's boss. I'm going to do it, boss. All right, now let's go, and we'll show you Bernie's answer with clip 22, part 2.
Yeah, how is it legal to do that? Why is it legal?
Joe, it is legal because they make the laws.
Right.
They make the laws.
That is what, here you're touching now on the heart and soul of the tragedy of American politics.
There you go.
How does it happen that on issue after issue, the American people, the working class of this country, want something, nobody pays any attention to it.
There you go.
But billionaires want something, and it gets done. And that has to do with a corrupt political system. So right now, if you are the Koch brothers or some multi-billionaire, you say to the leadership of the Republican Party, and in some cases to the Democratic Party, hey, guess what? We're prepared to put hundreds of millions of dollars into your campaign. Hundreds of millions of dollars coming from one or two people. And here is my agenda. I want tax breaks. I want a trade system which will enable me to shut down in this country and go to China or Mexico and pay people there $2 an hour. I want to be able to do more pollution because I don't like all of this, money I have to spend preventing pollution of the air or the water. That's what I want you to do. And by the way, I'm worried about the deficit, so you may as well cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. How many Americans actually believe that we should give tax breaks to billionaires and cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid? Very few. That is, talk to Mitch McConnell. Get Mitch on the show. That is exactly what he believes.
But that's ridiculous, right? And it seems that if you just took away those tax breaks, the enormous amount of money that would come from those corporations having to pay their fair share would take care of a lot of the expenses of all these things that you're proposing.
Exactly.
Now, can somebody explain to me why billionaires would want to do something like that? Why they would want to feather their bed while making other people suffer? Could somebody explain that to me? When you have more money than you could possibly spend, why wouldn't you want to share it? If your companies are so good and you've made so much money, why don't you want to give back? What could possibly be wrong with you? And guys, hey, it looks like we're getting a call. Oh, is that right? Yeah. How do you like this? Hey, you're on Who's Telling the Truth?
Hey, Rich.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you why.
Why is there so much reverb, echo?
I don't know.
All right, a quick why, go.
Because they think the world is going to end very soon, and they want to milk it while they can.
Okay, this echoes too much for me. Thanks for calling. All right, guys, I kind of understand. Okay. I have to turn my volume. Hey, it's the first time we had a call in so long. But guys, if you want to call in, I'm more than happy to take them. All right, now, Now we're going to go in the Wayback Machine. We're going to go back to 1981, and you're probably not going to recognize Jane Pauley, but we're also going to show you Phil Donahue, and we're going to have some fun with Bernie's first election victory in Burlington, Vermont. So, Kurt, number 23, please. Socialism in New
Face it,
England.
you don't find too many socialists in elective office in this country, and one is elected mayor of a sizable city. Well, that's news. It's also Phil Donahue's topic this morning.
Good morning, Jane. A couple of facts. Burlington is the largest city in Vermont. The state has about 500,000 people. Burlington has about 38,000. Situated as it is on Lake Champlain with the Adirondack Mountains viewable, it's a lovely, lovely spot in this country. We'd like you to meet its new mayor. This is Mayor Bernard Sanders. Mayor Sanders got a lot of attention recently, not only with his 10-vote victory out of about 9,500 votes cast, but mostly because he is a socialist. And everybody reading that article
by 10
said,
votes?
my goodness, how did this happen in good old conservative Vermont? How do you respond?
Well, in Vermont, being conservative is different perhaps than being conservative elsewhere in the country. Also, what I think most people don't know is Vermont happens to be one of the very poorest states in the country.
I didn't know
Although we're a little bit
that.
better off in
Not
Burlington, we
back
still have
then.
enormous economic problems. I won the election, I think, because we effectively put together a coalition of low-income people, elderly people who in Vermont are very often up against the wall economically, in very bad shape. Some of our city trade unions.
The cops supported you, didn't they?
The police department supported us, yes. The Patrolmen's Association did, right.
So you had police officers voting for you who probably voted for Ronald Reagan.
Well, I'm not so sure that I don't know if I can say
But that's
that.
certainly...
But the police officers in our particular city are earning, they're trade unionists, and they're earning very low wages, and along with many other workers in our city want some fundamental change. Also, we have in our city particular problems, I believe, with the police department that they've been concerned about, very low morale. So it didn't particularly surprise me.
How are Vermont conservatives different than national conservatives?
It's not big money conservatism. It's not right-wingism and warmongerism. In fact, Vermont has always had a very strong feeling about civil liberties. What conservatism means in Vermont basically is leave me alone, get the government off my back, and that's fine. It's a respect for other people's rights. We disagree, we'll talk it out. And that's a very different conservatism that says, let's go to war, supranationalism, and so forth.
If I were the president of the largest bank in Burlington, I'd be real nervous about you.
Well, they may be. They may be. But I think, and they are. But I think what we've often talked about also is that my powers as mayor are in many ways limited. And I have my visions as to what life should be in Vermont, in Burlington, and in the United States. But within Burlington, I acknowledge everybody knows what my powers are, and they're very limited. Right. We're not going to go around nationalizing banks or nationalizing industry. In fact, we want industry in Vermont that pay decent wages, and we're going to go out and bring that in like every other mayor in the United States is. We are going to speak out, though, on national and international issues which affect the city of Burlington. For example, obviously, we're very concerned about Mr. Reagan's policies, which are impacting devastatingly on low-income and working people. We're concerned about the policies in our own state government, which are affecting low-income people negatively.
Yeah.
But we know what our powers are within the city of Burlington.
When you sit around with your own friends talking about the world, how we got here, where we're going, what's the biggest grievance? Give us your overview.
All right.
What's the biggest grievance? When you're sitting around with your buddies, what are you talking about? And I'll tell you, this is interesting. So, Kurt, let's hit us with part 2.
When you sit around with your own friends talking about the world, how we got here, where we're going, what's the biggest grievance? Give us your overview.
All right, what we're talking about is that we believe in democracy. I mean, the problem with the word socialism is that very often it's been equated with what happens in the Soviet Union, which is authoritarianism. And
there you go. Thank you, Bernie.
I believe very strongly in the right of dissent, and I think people with my ideas fight for those things very strongly. What we talk about is the fact that in our society, theoretically a democratic society, you have a handful of people who control our economy. You have maybe 2% of the population that owns 1/3 of the entire wealth of America, 80% of the stocks, 90% of the bonds. And these people have incredible power. They sit on huge corporations like the Chase Manhattan Bank, the multinational corporations, and they determine the destiny of our entire country. As you know, perhaps 50% of our population has so given up on the democratic process, they don't even vote, and those are primarily poor people.
Your state is thought of as not only beautiful, but the place you go to get away from all that big city smut and soot and all the crud and you've got those wonderful ski areas. Hooray, let's go. More tourism for Vermont. How do you feel about that?
Well, there's yes and no. I think we don't object to people coming into Vermont to spend money. That's fine. But we do know within our own state, we happen to be, sadly, one of the very poorest states in America. And many of the people in Vermont themselves cannot afford to go to the downhill skiing. We do more cross-country skiing. It's cheaper. What we are talking about is the kind of developments that will provide decent jobs for our people. Very often, and this is a concern within our own state, is that industries such as the skiing industry and other tourist-attracting industries in Vermont, all over the country, and all over the world, they provide very low-paying, menial jobs. I'm not particularly proud that our state becomes a state where we have chambermaids and people waiting on other people. We would rather see our people doing meaningful, productive-type jobs where they can earn a decent wage.
Can you go to all those lunches, all of those banquets with the dais and the speeches and the cream chicken and all the wonderful Chamber of Commerce? Here we are, moving on.
Well, what I have said back home, and I say it again, is that our office is open. I've already talked to a number of business people. We will communicate. We're not shutting out anybody. But what I have also said is that what my concern is for the low-income people who are unemployed, who are working at minimum wage jobs, for the kids who are in Vermont as throughout the country. They're left out. They have no sense of purpose.
But everybody says that, Mayor.
Well, they're going to be coming into our door.
Do you want to tax, especially for people who make more than $25,000 a year?
Well, for individuals, perhaps not for families. That's too low. You know, we have husbands and wives.
But you would consider legislation that would tax the wealthy?
Absolutely. We want to take the burden of low-income and working people, and you've got to go to those institutions, those corporations, and those individuals who can better afford to pay.
So back 40 years ago, Bernie wanted to tax the profitable corporations. He hasn't changed. These corporations are getting away with murder. I mean, and the amount of money they pay the people at work, hey, the whole system is broken. We got to fix it. So now we're going to show you part 3 with Bernie, and I tell you, then we're going to go 40 years ahead. So, Kurt, number 25, please.
You surprised everybody with this victory, including media. And not all media has been consistently attentive to you. Isn't that right?
I think what people were saying is, well, gee, Ronald Reagan is a right-wing guy, and what happened in Burlington, Vermont? And I think the answer to that is I don't believe personally that the majority of people in America believe in Ronald Reagan's ideology. What happened was that Jimmy Carter failed. I think that's just clear as everybody, Mr. Carter would probably admit it. And people are looking for an alternative. Mr. Reagan, with hundreds of millions of dollars behind him, with sophisticated media use and so forth and so on, was able to say to the people, we are the alternative. Now, obviously, what we are trying to do, people like myself all around the country are saying, wait a minute, you're going to find out very soon that this guy is not the alternative. There are other alternatives.
Okay. I know these are terribly complicated questions, and our time is up, but are you a capitalist?
No, I'm not a capitalist.
So you don't believe in the profit motive, free enterprise? If I have a better mousetrap, I make more money.
There's something to be said for free enterprise on a local level and competition. But what we're happening in our society is we don't live in a free enterprise society. You live in a corporate capitalist society where in virtually every single industry you have giant multi-billion-dollar corporations competing, driving the small businessman out.
But let's pretend it would work without all that kind of acquisition of power that is unfair and doesn't...
Do I believe that the profit motive is fundamental to human nature? The answer is no. I think the spirit of cooperation, that you and I can work together better rather than having to compete against each other and destroy each other.
Bernard Sanders, Mayor, Burlington, Vermont. We'll watch with interest and wish you well.
Wish him well. Good. And, hey, guys, 40 years ago, he was talking about putting people before profits. And, you know, you're going to say, oh, Rich, a company has to have profits. Yeah, you're right. They do. You have to have profits. But not to the point where they're obscene. And I mean to the fact where it's just ridiculous. Where the shareholders, not the regular shareholders, but the corporate shareholders, the big boys. This is how they make their money. You know, they up the price of their stock. They issue more stock to themselves, and it's a bonus. But anyway, we're going to go 40 years into the future now, which was just yesterday on CBS. So, Kurt, let's see how Jane Pauley looks 40 years later. Hit it.
What's
the lure of Bernie Sanders?
Not too
for
shabby,
America's
huh?
young? Some thoughts from Time Magazine national correspondent Charlotte Alter, author of the new book, The Ones We've Been Waiting For.
After two strong showings by Bernie Sanders in the last 2 weeks, many of you may be wondering why so many young people are enthralled with the 78-year-old socialist. Here's the thing. Baby boomers who grew up during the Cold War were taught that socialism led to communism, and communism threatened American freedom. When they think of socialism, they think of the Soviet Union, with its gulags and bad economy.
The
But the millennials who
gulags.
support Sanders or Warren didn't grow up with that history.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
I'll never forget
The
how
oldest of them
happy I
turned
was
8
on that
the year
day,
the
guys.
Berlin Wall fell. To many of them, socialism means universal health care, child care, and free college, like in many parts of Europe. In fact, for many people my age, it's runaway capitalism, not creeping socialism, that's had the worst impact on our lives. Millennials came of age during the 2008 financial crisis. They're burdened by soaring college debt and can't afford many of the things their parents took for granted, like owning homes or cars.
There
They're
you
confronting
go.
a climate crisis that will leave parts of the world uninhabitable for their children. That's why they're tilting to the left. I'm not arguing in favor of democratic socialism. I'm a journalist, not an activist. But I do think that many Americans fundamentally misunderstand the trend. When millennials say they're socialists, they mean they want to elect leaders who will address the affordability crisis in housing, healthcare, childcare, and college tuition, and move aggressively on climate. And yes, they want higher taxes on the wealthy to pay for it. It used to be that the American government was actually ambitious about solving social problems. The progressives started the minimum wage and the income tax and ended child labor.
Supported by his New Deal advisors,
FDR established Social Security and put millions of people to work building roads, bridges, and schools. LBJ enacted Medicare for the elderly and Medicaid for the poor.
we are the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all.
Right or wrong, those big structural changes Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren talk about so much are just as American as any of those other bold reforms in our history. You may not like what they're asking for, but at least these progressives are trying to meet big challenges with big ideas for a better world.
So guys, you could see Bernie wants to make sure that Social Security is solvent. And guys, I'm going to throw Kurt a little bit of a curve. Kurt, we're going to jump ahead to 28. And I want to show people that Republicans like Social Security. Guys, everybody likes Social Security. But the thing is, what tends to happen is, if you don't take in enough money in tax, which is what happened with Trump, like Bernie said, 83% of Trump's tax cuts over 10 years went to the 1%. When they're not paying their fair share in taxes, where do they want to get the other money from? Social Security. Or they can take it from Medicare. They don't care. They don't care about you. That's the problem. So Kurt, let's prove my point with number 28.
I want to give you a little tiny bit of a history lesson. Now, Republicans opposed the creation of Social Security from the get-go. They were against it. They weren't willing to work with FDR and Francis Perkins and the heroes who created our Social Security system. Alf Landon, who ran against FDR, ran on an explicitly anti-Social Security campaign.
This is the largest tax bill in history, and to call it Social Security is a fraud on the working man.
And consequently, he lost every single state in America except for one. Now, Republicans got the message loud and clear from that. And the next elected Republican president, Dwight Eisenhower, took an entirely different approach to Social Security. He understood that Social Security works, that it's a deeply American program. People earn their Social Security. We see it coming out of our paychecks, and we know that it's there for us when we need it. It rewards hard work, or what Dwight Eisenhower said, had the American principle of self-reliance. That's where Republicans were. Each generation after the enactment of Social Security has done their part to build upon the cornerstone that FDR laid. And that includes the Republican administrations who saw that this system is something that Americans love. This is a system that is so efficient that less than 1 penny of every dollar paid into the system goes to administer the entire thing. For over 80 years, through boom and bust, through wartime and peace, no matter what happens, Social Security has never missed a single payment. This is a system that works. That's why Dwight Eisenhower, in a letter to his brother, said this: should any political party attempt to abolish Social Security, unemployment insurance, and eliminate labor laws and farm programs, you would not hear of that party again in our political history. There is a tiny splinter group, of course, that believes that you can do these things. Among them are a few Texas oil millionaires and an occasional politician or businessman from other areas. Their number is negligible and they are stupid. That's what Eisenhower said, and I agree with him. The problem is that that tiny reactionary splinter group now controls the entire Republican Party.
Controls the Republican Party. And if that ain't the truth, and who's the splinter group? The Koch brothers. Well, they're not the Koch brothers anymore. The one of them died. But you've got Walmart, and you've got the other big corporations, Jeff Bezos. Can you believe Amazon doesn't pay any federal taxes? I mean, that crap's got to change. But anyway, now we're going to go to part 2 with Republicans liking Social Security. And you know what Kurt had to say, when it comes to Medicare, the Republicans' answer is, we don't care. Thanks, Kurt. So let's have some more fun with number 29, please.
The problem is that that tiny reactionary splinter group now controls the entire Republican Party.
It is a Ponzi scheme.
Social Security is actually worse than a Ponzi scheme.
What that means is it's a Ponzi scheme. I'm going to take that as a yes, that you believe that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme.
There's no doubt that's what it is.
But Republicans around the country believe the exact opposite. Social Security is not a partisan issue out in America. Republicans, Democrats, Independents, they all agree. Not only do they not want to cut Social Security, they want to expand Social Security. They know that the only problem with Social Security is that for too many people, benefits are too low. We need to increase them. Around the country, there is a unanimous belief in Social Security. It's just that there's a well-funded propaganda campaign against the program to confuse people of who is on whose side.
This Social Security measure gives at least some protection to 30 million of our citizens who will reap direct benefits through unemployment compensation, through old age pensions, and through increased services for the protection of children and the prevention of ill health.
So guys, that's the answer. It's a well-funded political propaganda machine against Social Security. And how are you going to tell some old lady sitting at home that she doesn't deserve her Social Security? How are you going to say that to a guy that worked at Otis Elevator all his life? And all of a sudden you're going to say, hey, you know what? We're going to take that away from you. You know why? Because our deficit is getting too large. You know why? Because Trump gave tax cuts to the billionaires and the 1%. So you got to pay. You got to make up the difference because we can't live with this kind of debt. And you see how ridiculous the whole thing gets. But there's a way to answer a debate, and Bernie knows how to do it. So, Kurt, let's go to number 30 now.
You've called for big new government benefits like universal health care and free college. In a recent interview, you said you suspected that Americans would be, quote, delighted to pay more taxes for things like that. My question to you is, will taxes go up for the middle class in a Sanders administration? And if so, how do you sell that to voters?
Well, you're quite right. We have a new vision for America. And at a time when we have 3 people in this country owning more wealth than the bottom half of America, while 500,000 people are sleeping out on the streets today, we think it is time for change, real change. And by that I mean that health care, in my view, is a human right. And we have got to pass a Medicare for all single-payer system. Under that system, by the way, vast majority of the people in this country will be paying significantly less for health care than they are right now. I believe that education is the future for this country. And that is why I believe that we must make public colleges and universities tuition-free and eliminate student debt, and we do that by placing a tax on Wall Street. Every proposal that I have brought forth is fully paid for.
Senator Sanders, I'll give you 10 seconds just to answer the very direct question. Will you raise taxes for the middle class in a Sanders administration?
People who have health care under Medicare for all will have no premiums, no deductibles, no co-payments, no out-of-pocket expenses. Yes, they will pay more in taxes, but less in health care for what they get.
But less in health care. Get the idea? And why? Because now you're in a bigger pool where the money can work. We all get together and we tell the pharmaceutical companies and we tell the hospitals what they're going to charge. We don't let them take advantage of us. And the last clip we're going to play is Juan Williams, who's one of my favorites on Fox. And he's on the 5 every night at 5. But Juan doesn't pull any punches. He's honest. He's truthful. And we're going to go out with Juan, and then we're going to roll the credits. So I want to thank everybody. It's been a pleasure. Remember, hit that subscribe button. And every time we do a show, hopefully, which will be every Monday, and guys, if you go to Facebook and deal with me on Facebook, if you have any ideas, we might be able to use them on the next show. So, Kurt, number 27. Hit it. Uh-oh, we're almost out of time.
Also keeping track of Democrats who might be driving a hard left, and a lot of them happy to do so. Many positive about socialism.
Guys, I want to thank Kurt. He's doing a hell of a job.
The 5 co-hosts
giving 100%.
What is going on with
want to thank Candy and Dave and Comcast.
They were asked this, what are you more
and hopefully,
I think that's how it was framed.
Hopefully you learned something tonight. Hopefully we all learned something tonight.
To really dig a little deeper
how to take care of each other, how to be good to each other.
Label socialism or
almost what Jesus said, right? And I'm sure all those Christians are going to want to do exactly what Jesus said. Take care of the planet and take care of each other, right, Chris?